want to be saying, what? Then come, come a little more to the Merkaz. Feel free. Okay? All right. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. I want to thank our speaker, Friedman, who was here tonight. One thing we wanted to do is we wanted to not stress your back. So we're doing it in this room because this is a health class. So that's why we're on these comfortable chairs as opposed to on the folding chairs. And that's the last failed joke I'm going to give tonight. Okay? I want to thank Friedman for his volunteering his time to share with us today, to share with us a very important topic for all of us, which is what the Torah has to say about health. And hopefully it'll be inspirational so that we can undertake the different things which we can, each of us personally glean from the talk tonight, so that we can better our efforts towards health, and therefore, if I'm getting your direction correctly, turning that towards our service of God as well.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Led, for the introduction as well. I think you are getting the drift. Okay. So my name is Avi Friedman. Thank you all for coming. Usually weekday nights are not easy for people to come, so I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. It means a lot to me and to the topic as well. So I was talking to one of my clients a few months ago, who works as a health coach, and talking about making a plan, trying to see how she could get healthy for moving forward, has certain goals that she's working towards. And she asked me, is it possible to be Frum, to be a religious Jew, and still be healthy? Because all the challenges we have, there's constant barrage of different Yom Tovim coming up, there's different simchas that we have. Is it really practical to eat healthy with all the things that we have in a Frum lifestyle? So it got me thinking that it seems to be that it's the understanding for a lot of people that the Frum lifestyle is not really possible with the health focus, which is, if you look through all the challenges we have, you look at all the advertisements we have for the all-you-can-eat buffets and the 5-6 course Shabbos meals, you have the gala kiddushes with the spread of who knows what, and we always talk about the jokes, like every Yontif that we talk about, the non-Jews tried to kill us, we won, and then let's eat. Like that's the famous joke that is associated with the religious lifestyle. So then it got me thinking, is that really what Hashem wants from us? Is that really what God wants for us to do to lead an unhealthy lifestyle? Because if anything, Judaism versus any other religion, there's a lot more focus for every aspect of our life is pretty much mapped out for us to know what to do, what not to do. So to me, it seemed like there's no way that Hashem wanted us to lead an unhealthy lifestyle. It didn't make any sense. So what happened? What happened that made it that all of a sudden we go from leading a lifestyle of Torah and mitzvos and somehow that incorporated into us also including all these different health aspects of unhealthiness. So we're going to take a look at the Torah Hashkafic tonight to see what exactly the Torah says about the Torah and the different Chazal say about being healthy. So in general, why is it a general good idea to be healthy? There's lots of different reasons. You look at the statistics in the medical field, you see the influx of all the different diseases, the 37% obesity rate, the over 70% overweight rate, and everything that's weight-related illnesses, ranging from diabetes and heart disease and inflammation, all those different things. And part of our obligation as Frum Jews is to, even leaving the Torah aspect aside of the health related within the Chazal, we're obligated in our generation to follow what the medical society says about what's healthy as a general rule. And it's something that we have to keep in mind, that when the doctors and the health society is telling us that being at a healthy weight is important for health, that in and of itself is an obligation for us to lead a healthy lifestyle. But a lot of actually what the physicians say now, and a lot of the medical society says now, actually does have roots already in Chazal, and already has roots in different Torah sources. So let's get a little bit into it. So first let's start off is why is it important to be healthy? So why do Chazal say it's so important to focus on our health? So at the end of Shulchan Aruch, the last sif in Choshen Mishpat, it says, the last sif he's talking about all the different things that you're not supposed to do in terms of drinking water that was left out overnight because in case there were snakes in it, and all these different food-related halachos. He says, if anyone is over on this, anyone that doesn't listen to all these halachos, and he says, Hareini misakim ba'atzmi, I'm going to put myself in a dangerous situation. Umala acher malai b'kach, and I don't care if someone else has to worry about me. I'm just going to do what I want. Oh, eini makbi b'kach, or if someone just says, I just don't care. So makin so makin mardus, v'nizr mehem alav tavol brachas tov. And the Chosh Mishra, the Shulchan Aruch says, we would quote unquote hit him for rebelling, and if someone is very careful in this, that he'll get a blessing of goodness. So Chosh Mishra was talking about different aspects of being careful with our physical health, and the Be'er Agola is one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, and he's the grandfather of the Vilna Gaon. So he says, why is, when you look at the pasuk, Nishmartim me'od l'nafsho seichem. So there are some Mefarshim that say that it does apply to physical health, some Mefarshim that say it applies to watching our nefesh, our spiritual health. So he says, why is health me'od? He seems to be in the camp of that it's physical health. So he says, because a person could do so much with his life. Because life is, of all of our precious commodities and we have in this world, life is the most precious one. And that's one we're the most careful with. And really we're here, we have our life to do mitzvahs and to serve Hashem. And if a person is not taking care of themselves physically, so the Be'er Agola says, it's as if he's telling Hashem, I don't need you. I don't need you to give me health. I don't need your mitzvahs. I don't need your life. I'm going to take care of myself. And there's nothing as reckless as that in telling Hashem that I'm not going to take care of my health, because it's showing Hashem that I don't value the life that you're giving me. I don't value the avodas Hashem that I can do in this world. And the fact that you're not being machshav, the fact that you're not showing that you care so much about life, that's a bigger crime, and showing Hashem that you don't care so much. And even just to point out within the Shulchan Aruch, and he also talks about the fact that if someone says to the masses, says, I don't care if other people, he points out the fact that we do have the responsibility not just for ourselves, for our own physical health, to do our own mitzvahs, but the fact that we would put ourselves as a burden on other people, that also is not fair. The fact that we would say, whatever happens to me, like the saying now that you only live once, the YOLO, I don't care, it's my life, I can do whatever I want with it. But think about the impact it has on not just ourselves, but also our families, our loved ones, our neighbors, our friends. It really does it has an impact on everything else. And that also is a factor that we have to take into account why it's so important to take care of our health. There's also a Gemara in Shabbos that Rav Huna is telling his son Rabbah, he saw that Rabbah stopped going to his Rebbe. He stopped going to his Rebbe Rav Chisda. This is on Shabbos, Pei Beis, on Beis, 82. He says, why didn't you go to your Rebbe anymore? Why did you stop going to Rav Chisda? What's going on? It wasn't the type to play hooky. Moran didn't do that. So he said, because what do I need to go to him for? He's just talking about regular stuff. It's not Torah based. Why should I even go? So Rav Huna said to him, so what's he talking about? What do you mean? What do you mean he's talking about regular stuff? So he said, Rabbah said, he's just talking about how the best way to go to the bathroom and things like that. I don't need to do that. I want to learn Torah. That's all I want to focus on. So Rav Huna said, if that's the case, if that's what Rav Chisda is talking about, then all the more so that you should go. It's so important not just to learn the Torah from your Rebbeim, but to learn about health as well. And he said, if that's the case, that it's not talking about Torah specific, but he's talking about health related, then you even have more of an obligation to go and to learn from him. There's also a medrash in Vayikra, the medrash Vayikra Rabbah. It talks about Hillel Azaki. Hillel is a famous one medrash that's more famous than the other. Hillel used to go after he would learn the base medrash. He would go leave, and his Talmidim asked him, "Where are you going, Rebbe?" Back then they used to follow their Rebbeim because they got to learn from every aspect of the Rebbe's life. So where are you going? He said, I'm going to do a mitzvah. I'm going to serve Hashem. What mitzvah are you doing? I'm going to a bathhouse. I'm going to take a shower or take a bath. So his Talmidim said, like, what do you mean? That's not a mitzvah. That's something that we have to do just because it's part of everyday life. So Hillel told him, so he gave a mashal that let's say you had a king who had statues, right? You had statues, and one person's job was to make sure that all the statues were polished and washed and make sure that it looked presentable because it's the king's image. So Hillel said, just like if that was the case, if someone was one of the servants of the king would be presented with that task of making sure that the statues are well taken care of, all the more so, and that's for just a king of flesh and blood, all the more so for me, I have the same obligation for myself, and that, he said, is considered a mitzvah, because he said, because we're Tzelem Elokim Asa Adam, because we're all created in the image of Hashem, we're all created in God's image, and therefore, it's as when we're taking care of ourselves and we're washing ourselves, it's as if we're taking care of Hashem's body, quote unquote, as well. And additionally, the Medrash also gives a story, like another version of the story. He said, they asked Hillel, where are you going? He left yeshiva. So he said, I'm going to do hachnasas orchim. I'm going to take care of a guest. So they asked him, what do you mean taking care of your guest? So he said, I'm going to take care of my guf, my body. What do you mean? What do you mean taking care of your body? How's that honoring your guest? So he said, because isn't the nefesh a guest inside our body? One day it's here, one day it's not. So that's also the fact that taking care of our body is the same thing of where by taking care of our body, that's honoring our guest and being able to care for it in a better way. Then there's also the Pele Yoetz brings down, this is a fascinating piece from the Pele Yoetz. He says, Misha einu nishmar mikol davar mazik legufo. If someone's not careful from anything that damages his body, nimtza shu oyev la'atzmo. It's as if you're an enemy to yourself, and you want your own downfall. Not only will you might be impacted in this world, you'll have to give an account after you pass away to Hashem why you did it. Why? How does he know this? Because he says, because if you hit someone else, if someone inflicts pain on another person, and you're responsible for that, and it's all the more so that if you hit yourself, and if you don't take care of yourself, you put yourself in a dangerous situation, then you're even more responsible for that. He says, and that's why we know if there's any chance of pikuach nefesh, then we go to the nth degree. If there's any chance that our life is at risk, whether it means being Machal Shabbos, and again, speak to your local rabbi about any practical examples, but you have to, any chance that we're gonna risk our life, we have to go to whatever degree we can. And he brings down the pasuk, and he brings down both psukim for that these are both responsibilities for taking care of ourselves. So these are some of the main marmakomas, the same main sources that talk about taking care of our health. But of course, the most famous proponent of health is the Rambam. The Rambam brings down Hilchos Deos, which is the chapter of sound like psychology. And actually, one person, I forgot where I heard it from, one person I was listening to in a shir, he said the reason why the Rambam brings down health related in Deos, which is more mindset, is because the Rambam knew that mindset plays a huge role in taking care of ourselves physically. So the Rambam brings down his first, in the main parak that he discusses health related halachos. So he says the following. He introduces it by saying, since keeping our body complete and healthy is part of the ways of Hashem. Why does it mean that it's the ways of Hashem? It's impossible for us to really understand Torah, understand Hashem, if we're not feeling well, if we're sick. We all know if we have a headache, if we have a toothache, we have even something that's so minimal like that, it completely ruins the rest of our day. We can't focus the same way, we can't concentrate the same way. And I'm saying, because of that, we're not going to really be able to fulfill our mission of knowing Hashem at those moments. So therefore, he says, you have to be marchik yourself. A person has to distance himself, midvarim ha'abdim esaguf, things that would hurt our body. And therefore, we have to take, not just, the Rambam talks about both aspects. He says, first of all, we have to avoid anything that's dangerous. Anything that could harm us, you for sure have to avoid. But not just that, he says you also have to do things that will improve your body and be able to improve your health. So a lot of these Rambam, they talk about the importance of a chazal and the Torah places on being healthy. We definitely see it's not just the fact that we have to do with what the medical times say for us, but it's also brought down in Torah sources. So, but is it an actual mitzvah from the Torah to be healthy, right? It's nice that the Torah values health, but is there an actual mitzvah d'oraisa of being healthy? So, as with everything in Chazal, it's a machlokes. But the psukim that are brought down, it says there's two psukim actually in this past week's parsha in Veschanan. So the first pasuk is Raki Shomer Lecha Ushmar Nafshecha Ma'od. You should be careful for yourself and watch your nefesh very carefully. And the rest of the pasuk, in case you forget stuff from your heart and you forget about Hashem. And then a few psukim later it says V'nishmartem Me'od Nafshesechem. You have to guard very carefully your nefesh. And so the Chazal talk about whether does that mean your physical nefesh, your physical body, or sometimes when Chazal, the Torah says nefesh, it also refers to our neshama, our soul. So there are definitely a lot of mafarshim that say that it's just talking about spiritual health, and we have to be very careful with our spiritual health to make sure that we're taken care of. The Kli Yakar, one of the famous commentaries on the Chumash, he has two explanations. He said, first he's bothered by the question, why do they have two different psukim, right? Why does it say both the Yishamar Lecha and Yishmartem Nafshesechem? And even in the first pasuk, it says Yishamar Lecha Ushmor Nafshecha Ma'od. Be careful and watch your nefesh very carefully. So he has two explanations on this double language. The first explanation is that what really, as we were saying before, as some people say it's for spiritual, some people say it's for physical health. So he said the first one is for physical health, and the second one is for spiritual health. But in his second explanation, he says really they're both for physical health. Really, both of these parts of the pasuk are talking about our physical health. One's talking about our muscles and our organs. The other one's talking about our blood. And the one that says me'od by it, which the Torah doesn't say me'od that often, but the one that says me'od, he says that's referring to our blood, because the blood in our body is our nefesh. It's the life source of everything we have, is the blood that we have in our bodies. So he brings down that really is the one that we have to be even more careful about, because that's the life source of us. And because we have that life, we'll be able to do more mitzvahs and really serve Hashem properly. It's also brought down in the Gemara and Brachos, talking about a person was davening on the road, and there was a Roman officer that came and said, he said hello to him. The person was in the middle of davening, so he ignored him. And the officer said, doesn't it say in your Torah that you have to watch your life? And I could have killed you. If I would have been more aggressive, I could have taken you out because you ignored me. You ignored an officer. And the person said to him, he brought a mashal. He's like, what about if I was talking to the king? Would you, and you came by, I would ignore you. So similarly, I'm talking to Hashem, who's the king of all kings. That's why I didn't respond to you. So it's not necessarily indicative from the Gemara that mean that what we actually take a halacha, that those two psukim are actual mitzvahs d'oraisa. But there's other mefarshim that say that the Shulchan Aruch quotes, and when he talks about eating things that are bad for our health, he says that's part of the mitzvah. The Rambam in Hilchos Rotzech says that it's d'oraisa. Chassam Sofer in Yoredeya says it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to watch our health. The Levush says it's only d'Rabbanan, but there's plenty of sources that tell us that it's even not just a good thing, but it could even be a mitzvah d'oraisa for us to take care of our health. And even aside for those two mitzvahs, there's a third mitzvah that it could be included in. So we say every day, twice a day, in Shema, the end of Shema, don't wander after your hearts and after your eyes. So what does that mean? it means that we shouldn't go after our taiva. We shouldn't go after what our body desires. We should really focus on what's important for us spiritually. The Sefer HaChinuch, when he brings down this mitzvah, he adds in it, a person should not go after his eyes. What's included in that? A person should not go after the taivas of this world. Anything that's something that's our desire, our innate desires because the end result is going to be bad for us. And what he includes in there, so obviously there's a lot of things that we know that our desires, things that we do are bad for us spiritually, but he also includes in there, if a person has in mind that I'm going to constantly eat tainugim gedolim lenafsho, b'li sheyichaven behem klal, the kavanah tova. I'm going to go eat a ton without any specific good purpose. What does it mean without a good purpose? That he says shelo yasek kadesh yamod bari v'yuchal l'shtadel b'avos bar, not because it's going to keep me healthy and I'll be able to serve Hashem better. Rather, rak lahashem nafsho b'tainugim, because I want to satisfy myself with pleasurable foods. So he says anyone that goes in this path, he's over on this law of los asurach v'avachem v'achrei nechem. And that's definitely something, even aside for the fact that whether it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, the actual physical health, which is a machlokes, even that in and of itself, if we have, and we know, we see advertisements all over, whether it's the Pesach programs or the Shalach Manos baskets that go beyond over the top, and these are really things that if we think about it, objectively, we think about it, that there's really no reason for that, and that's not what Hashem wants. It's not what the Torah talks about when we're going all out. That's not something necessarily a Torah hashkafa. And last but not least, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch writes, and he quotes the Rambam, that a person should be keep himself away from things that are bad for him, as well as be proactive about other things that are good for him. And he quotes the pasuk of V'shmartem od nafshasecha. We have to be careful for our nefesh. So whether it's mitzvah d'oraisa, we see that it's super important. See, it might be a mitzvah d'oraisa. So what do we do about it, right? If we came tonight and just got that, I'd be walking out and saying, okay, it was a nice topic, it was a nice Torah shiur, but what's it there for? What can I do personally to take the next step in doing that? So that question, so what can we do about it, is something that I had for many years. Just a little bit of my background, I was overweight my whole life until I was about 22. I even got to a point where I just tried all the different diets out there. I tried different programs. My parents bribed me to lose weight. And I got to a point I was 270 pounds. And my doctor told me, you're 3 years away from heart attack. Your cholesterol's terrible. You really got to make a change. So I asked him, okay, so what do I do? What, doctor? You're the doctor. You're the medical professional. What do I do? He said, you know what? Just eat healthier and work out. Okay. I had never heard that before. I never knew that before. So I left that doctor's office, and it really stuck out in my mind the fact that I feel like you have to give someone direction. You have to have some idea, aside for the basics, which we all know. We all know that that's what we need to do. We all know we need to eat healthier, but we need to have something substantial to be able to take that knowledge and really apply it to ourselves. So what does the Torah say about getting healthy? Right? The Torah doesn't give us mitzvos without giving us an explanation, without giving us some sort of guidelines to go about that. And we know that aside from the fact that the Torah is that the way of the Torah is pleasant, and that's the best way to live our lives. And there's lots of studies about the effects of eating non-kosher animals, and the studies that they have, scientific studies about certain those animals have different illnesses. But there actually is a formula in Chazal that they bring down about living a longer and higher quality life. So if I were to ask you, I know I'm sure a lot of people here have different doctors, if you go to a doctor and say, doctor, I want the foolproof way to live long. I want to live all the way till I'm over 100 years old. Can you guarantee me that you get long life? I don't think there's any doctor in this world that have the audacity. And if there were, I would stay away from them. But there is one doctor in history that we prescribe to who gave a guarantee. The Rambam actually has, in Hilchos Deos, the Rambam goes through a whole list of different ideas, things that we should do to keep healthy, which I'll elaborate in a minute. But he says that if anyone that trains himself in these ways, in the ways that I'll explain in a minute, ani arev lo she'ina bali de choli kol yamav. I guarantee, the Rambam says, the Rambam is guaranteeing for us that you won't become sick your whole life, ad sheyaskin harbe, until you get very old, v'yamas, and then you'll pass away. Ve'eno tzarech l'rofei, you won't even need a doctor. V'yagufa shalim v'omeid al buriyav kol yamav, and your body will be complete and healthy your whole life, unless there is one caveat. Unless your gufo was ra mitchilas b'riyasa, if you had some genetic disorder, if when you were born there was something wrong with your body, or if you do negative behaviors in terms of keeping your health, or if there's some sort of plague and some sort of illness and disease that comes about. Aside for that, the Rambam is saying if you follow specific guidelines that I'm going to give you, you will be healthy the rest of your life. You will have not just you'll be able to keep your body healthy, but you'll have longevity and you'll have a higher quality of life. So what is that? Right? We all see there's a secret formula. The Rambam says he's guaranteeing us to live a healthy life. So what is it? Right? So he brings down the first three things he brings down is that a person should not eat unless you're hungry. You should not drink unless you're thirsty. And if you need to use the bathroom, you should use it right away. Those are the three main things the Rambam brings down, where you don't eat unless you're hungry, don't drink unless you're thirsty, and if you need to use the bathroom, use it right away. Which seems simple enough. But the Rambam goes through a lot more examples of what we need to do to keep healthy. And a lot of them are fascinating. Some that we would think that is recent scientific discoveries, recent science studies, but really it's even beferish in the Rambam. The Rambam has it straight out there. For example, he brings the different foods that you should eat. He has different categories of foods. We know the concept of moderation, right? Eat everything in moderation. The Rambam talks about that. He said there are certain foods you should eat tons of, whether the fruits and vegetables and different things like that. He brings us certain foods that you should have only sometimes, and only a certain amount. And then there are foods that you should never have. And obviously, as the Rambam brings down foods that were applicable for his times, and actually the Malbim brings down, when he discusses the Rambam, he says that a lot of what the Rambam is saying is only applicable for his specific time, and we have an obligation to follow the science of our times. So the specific foods that he brings down, at least it seems from medical studies now, they're not necessarily correlate with everything the Rambam brings down, but the Malbim says that it's really for his time, but the concept remains true that we should have certain foods to always have, certain foods to have in moderation, and certain foods to avoid. He also brings down, is actually an interesting one the Rambam brings down, is that if a person is exercising a lot, and he tires himself out, and he also doesn't eat till he's full, and he also uses the bathroom when he needs to, even if he eats unhealthy food, even if he eats food that's bad for him, he still will be healthy for his life. So it's interesting for those exercise enthusiasts. It's definitely something, as long as we still don't overeat and eat too much of the bad things, then that also could help us. He also says that if a person just has a sedentary lifestyle, if someone is Yoshev Levetach, he just sits and doesn't do anything, doesn't do any exercise, even if you're eating the good food, you'll still have, he says, you'll suffer pain your whole life and your strength will fade away. And he says also, he talks about achila gaso, when you're overeating, which we would say binge eating in today's vernacular. He says it's a samhama, he calls it a poison. Binge eating and overeating is a poison for a person, and it's the ikr l'chol hachaloim. And it's the main cause of all the illnesses, not all, but a majority of the illnesses we have nowadays, the Rambam saying, is due to overeating and binge eating.
And what?
Binge eating.
Binge eating.
Yeah. So he says if either from eating the wrong foods or eating, he's filling your food, you're filling your stomach even with food that's good for you, you're still putting yourself in a dangerous situation. Another interesting one that we talk about, the science talks about, is chewing slowly, right? It's a common one that you just slowly chew your food, try to make sure that you're digesting every part of it, that way it'll keep you fuller longer. That's actually brought down in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. He says the beginning of digestion is the mouth, through chewing and grinding the food. Therefore, a person should not basically swallow his food whole, because then it's bad for your digestion, it's bad for your stomach. Rather, you should chew constantly to be able to make sure that the food's getting digested properly. So who here, I was asked the crowd, who here takes a nap on Shabbos afternoon? Another one? Yeah. How many hours, let's say, how many hours do you usually get on a Friday night and you still want to nap on Shabbos afternoon? 9, 10, sometimes 12. I know some people try to get the bagel, they get the 12 hours on a Friday night. So why do we feel so tired on Shabbos afternoon that we need to take a nap? I mean, we had a long week, but we have 9, 10 hours a night. We have sometimes even longer at night to sleep. Why do we need so much? A lot of it's because the way we have the food we have on Shabbos lunch and Friday night, it really gets us exhausted. It really gets us, it makes us in a sleepy mode, whether it's the chalent or the challah or whatever it is. It really gets us to get into a very tired state oftentimes. There are people that don't need naps, but I personally do need a nap. And I notice that the times I need a nap more is when I overate by the meal, because we're all human. And so one thing we have to keep in mind is, in addition to keeping it for our own health, but the quality and the quantity of the mitzvahs that we do is really impacted by what we eat and how we take care of ourselves. Like, I know if someone usually has learns for an hour on Shabbos afternoon, but because he's so tired, he ends up oversleeping and has a 4-hour nap on Shabbos afternoon, then a lot of it is our responsibility for putting ourselves in a situation when we're too tired to learn. Or even if we do learn, we push ourselves to learn, we push ourselves to visit someone who's sick, but we won't have the same energy, we won't have the same quality of the mitzvos. So aside from the fact that there's an aspect of making sure that we have a long life to be able to be healthy, to have a long life to do more mitzvahs and serve Hashem more, in addition, there's an aspect of the quality of our mitzvahs. If we're exhausted all the time, then there's no way we can spend time taking care of whoever needs to take care of. There's no time to learn the same way, to do the same chesed, to daven the same way. When we're exhausted because we're not sleeping at night, it's because we're just not taking care of ourselves and not sleeping enough because we want to stay up and do things that don't need to be done. A lot of that becomes our responsibility. Hashem is giving us the life that we need, and we're not necessarily making the best choices. So when we talk about practically, right, we're talking about how to go about this practically. We see the importance, we see the Rambam talks about it. What do we do from here, right? So we all know, if I had to ask the room, and I'm sure I'd get pretty unanimous, anyone talking about what's considered healthy, what foods are healthy, what foods are not healthy, I'm sure that to some degree, with little variances here and there, everyone would have the same answer. Everyone would say fruits and vegetables is healthy. Everyone would say donuts and cookies and cake are not healthy, right? We all know the basics of health. We all know what foods are considered healthy, what things are not. No one's surprised to hear that cakes and cookies are not healthy. I hope not. But so why don't we eat better? Why don't we make better food choices, right? Because a lot of it, what we do, and that's what I was saying before with the Rambam, with the Deos, with the mindset, a lot of it is mindset focused. It's the behavioral challenges that we have. There's temptations in front of us, whether it's at work or whether it's at home, we're at someone's house, or whether there's a kiddush in the shul, and we see extra food that we didn't have before. We go to a wedding, and there's a shmorg, and a meal, and then a post-meal, and a Viennese table, and all the different parts of it. So it's an uphill battle with what we're presented with in front of, not just in terms of the food industry, with all the advertisements and the way they present the food, but also even within ourselves. In our society, we have behavioral challenges because by nature, there's a lot of temptations and a lot of opportunities that we have to make some choices. And we all know that when we talk about diets, we talk about how to lose weight. Okay, I'll just go on a crash diet. I'll be careful for 2 months, and then I'll go back to the way I was eating before, my habits from before. We all know that doesn't really work. There are actually studies that 85% of people that lose weight on a diet within 2 years will gain it back, if not more. And because it's not really a sustainable model, if we starve ourselves or we deprive ourselves of the short term, that's not really going to cut it. Actually, speaking of diets, does anyone know where in the Chumash it talks about the first diet? Anyone? No? Huh? That's a good one, right? The one that I was thinking of is when we're in the Bnei Yisrael, we're in the Midbar, and they had the mun, and the Bnei Yisrael were complaining, Hashem, we want meat. So Hashem's like, you know what? You want meat? Okay, I'll give it to you. You'll be eating meat all day, every day. And that's where the Atkins diet started from the mid-morning. So let me ask you a question, right? So my own personal story, I was overweight for 22 years and obese, morbidly obese even. So is there any chance that I could just figure it out? I could just figure out, okay, I'm just gonna eat healthy, I'll do it. There's no way, if I still had that same mindset that I'll just deprive myself for a short term, that's not really gonna happen. That's not really gonna make a difference. And I won't be able to keep a sustainable idea to keep my weight off. So what I learned through my journey, through my mentors and coaches I worked with, there's really 4 ideas that we can use, 4 practical tips that we can take with us, 4 categories of tips that we can take with us to be able to sustain us for not just a temporary fix, a temporary little solution, but really for a long-term solution. So the first category really is a structured eating plan. When we know if we emotionally eat, that's when we're just making bad choices. And when we have a specific idea, a meal plan, eating every few hours to make sure that we're not starving in between meals, and making sure we know what portion sizes are to make sure that we, and there's lots of different studies about what healthy portion sizes are. We all know cutting out sugar is good for our daily eating. Hydration, trying to have 8 cups of water, is highly recommended by most health professionals. Just having a structured eating plan, that in and of itself is a great idea, a great tip to be able to implement within ourselves. Aside from that, there's also trying to learn healthy habits, which is really the biggest idea for long-term success, is because the more we get into habit, the more that, and again, this is with every aspect of ruchnius, the fact that we ingrain in ourselves trying to take on a daily learning routine, to be able to do more chesed, more mitzvahs. We have that same idea, try to build it into a habit, build it into our routine, things like that. So learning about how to incorporate a habit of sleeping enough at night, and whether it's 8 hours or a little bit less, but each person needs a different amount. Turn about getting movement into our day, right? Trying to build a healthy habit. And again, I'm not a marathon runner. I don't know if I'll ever run a marathon. I'm not sure, the full one. I hope to do a 5K, like the rabbi. Like your...
I did a half marathon.
A half marathon. Oh, sorry, a half marathon, like the rabbi. But again, trying to just take opportunities to get more movement into our day, whether it means standing by our desk, whether it means walking, parking far away from the grocery store to make sure that we get more movement, things like that. Different ideas to get more movement into our day, to build that healthy habit as that. The last 2 are, I think, the less known about. In terms of the third one is our environment. Try to get us into a healthy environment. What does that mean? So there's really 2 parts to that. Our healthy social environment and our healthy physical environment. Socially, if we hang out with people, and there's lots of studies that you're like the 5 people you spend the most time with, if we try to incorporate relationships and friends that we hang out with that are like-minded and health-minded, and there's lots of opportunities to go, there's walking groups and running groups and just hiking groups and biking groups, and there's lots of different opportunities to get together with people that are like-minded and trying to work on their health, to be able to incorporate that into our lives, as well as our physical environment. There's lots of ideas to be able to keep our houses, our work environment, to be able to keep them in a healthy way. Like, for example, keeping junk out of our house, stuff that we know triggers us. Like, I know a friend of mine, a coworker of mine, she had a bowl of chocolates on her desk. And I know she was trying to work on her health. She's like, oh, I need to have it out there because in case someone comes in. But what ended up happening is she would finish it each time. So even though we don't necessarily need things like that, especially stuff that is good for us. And I know for my kids, if they want to have ice cream, I'll get them a flavor that I don't like. They happen to like mint chocolate chip, which is, I don't really like mint ice cream. So because of that, I won't have that temptation, the added temptation of something that's going to get to me. Knowing our weakness, and even like small little things of like keeping a bowl of fruit on our counter, so that's the first thing we see when we're hungry. We'll have the fruit. When we have our pantry, try to keep the junk or the other stuff we don't want to have on a different shelf than we're used to, and put healthy options on the top. Even things like buying smaller plates. There are lots of scientific studies about how plate size, having a 9-inch plate or 8.5-inch plate, reduces the amount that we actually eat during the meals. Things like that, and obviously trying to incorporate healthier ingredients into the foods that we make at home. There are things like that we can make our environment more possible for that. And the fourth really is having a mentor, having an accountability partner, whether it's a coach, a friend, a spouse, having someone that really keeps track of you and try to work with you together. Like I've had, and it has to be someone that you can relate to, someone that's been there before. Like I've gone to nutritionists as a kid. I saw one nutritionist. She was very skinny, and she told me that she never struggled with weight herself, but she wanted to get people healthy. So for me, all of a sudden, I was probably 12 years old, like my blinders went up. I'm like, I can't. Like if you don't know what it's like to put away a pie of pizza at one sitting, it's hard for me to relate. So someone that's been on the journey before, someone that's working on their health, something like that is something that we have to work on. And as well as an accountability partner could be a spouse or someone that you just text every week and check in with each other, seeing how you're doing, someone that you care about, and someone that you can make sure will keep you in check with what you're trying to achieve. Like I know I have clients I work with, and they tell me I try to call them on Mondays, and they said, I was about to go take some takeout for supper, but I knew you'd be calling me tonight, so I withstood the temptation and I avoided it. So when we know that we have someone that's going to check in with us and really hold us to what our goals are and what we're trying to accomplish, it makes a big difference. And also, in addition, it's good for us to be an accountability for someone else. Like they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, the last step is to sponsor someone, to really help someone else out, to be a mentor, because that in turn really ingrains with us the ability to be healthy ourselves. So these are all important ideas to build for our healthy habits, which is definitely a Torah concept in terms of being healthy, both for the quality of our lives, the quantity of our lives. And I want to end off with the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim talks about in the Sefer Shmiras HaLashon, on the bottom he brings down, there's a story, there's a Rosh Yeshiva, there's a head of a yeshiva in Europe, and he leaves it anonymous for a reason, who would go through and really not eat properly. He said he wouldn't have the right meat he's supposed to have because his Talmidim were starving. It was times like that where everyone was really poor. No one could really afford the proper amount of food necessarily. And what the Rosh Yeshiva would do is he would forego his own portion to be able to give it to his Talmidim. And the Chofetz Chaim gave him a little musar. I mean, he understood why he did that. It was important for him to have his Talmidim be healthy. But the Chofetz Chaim told him, he said, a healthy Rosh Yeshiva, what your Talmidim need the most is a healthy Rosh Yeshiva. They need to be healthy themselves, but they also need a healthy Rosh Yeshiva. And like I compare it to every time I go on a plane, you put your oxygen mask on first, because if you can't help yourself, you're not going to be able to help other people as well. And we all have people in our lives that we have the responsibility for, that we care about, and whether it's a child, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a parent, whoever it is in our lives that we have, a friend, a neighbor, whatever it is, if we don't take care of ourselves first, be able to maximize our own energy and our own quality, then we won't be able to be there for the other person. And that's why lots of studies with nurses, a lot of nurses are so selfless and they don't really take care of themselves properly, even though what would end up happening is if they would take care of themselves properly, they would have a higher quality of care with other people. So I want to encourage everyone to take a step towards, and again, it's a journey. There's no quick fixes. It's not like we're always constantly growing in our health. We're trying to take on new things. Just try to take one thing. If you want to challenge, try eating, cutting out extra sugar from your diet for a week. You could try eating every 2-3 hours something like a low glycemic, which is like a high protein and vegetable kind of dish. Try eating every 2-3 hours and see after a week how you feel, because it really would make a difference. And it could be taking your first step would be finding a spouse, finding a buddy, talking to me, something like that, to be able to really take that step towards actualizing your goals, to be able to make it clear in your mind, to be able to make a difference for your health. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I also have a little sheet outside if you want to. I do like a healthy newsletter once a week if you want to sign up for that as well. And thank you all for coming, and I hope that we can really inspire ourselves, inspire other people around us to not just work on our own health, but to work on other people's health. We have to focus on ourselves first, because if we're not healthy for ourselves, we can't be healthy for other people. Thank you so much.
Anybody have a question before we go on? Okay. Okay, we could do private if you want as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Abby.